table will not feature. Okay. So, Mr. Bama was talking about the fact that trade has already begun for goods, right? Because out of the many protocols, goods was actually under phase 1 of the implementation of the AfCFTA. But now, unfortunately, negotiations are still being held back in some areas, especially on the rules of origin, textiles, automotive, and fishery, as you said earlier. What can we do to accelerate those negotiations to ensure that they consider the local development priorities of countries, whilst also setting ambitious targets for the development of regional nations?
Yeah, one thing we need to understand with the AfCFTA is that it is a member-driven concept, which means the state parties or the member states, those who have ratified, are negotiating on individual basis. Even when you are coming from a custom union, like the case of SELAC, EAC, SACA, and economies, you are negotiating as an individual country. It's about a sovereignty issue. The policy space will be liberalized or will be given by the country, by the member states, not by the union. This said, the process entails that each country comes and defends their interest, but taking into consideration the regional priority of integrating the continent. These rules of origin, they are in progress, and I think the Council of Ministers responsible for trade will be convening before the end of this year to examine the current states of negotiation. Okay. If you look at, we have covered significant percentage of negotiation for rules of origin, more than 90%, which is laudable. Even at the WTO, negotiating rules of origin on the outstanding issues, notably automotive and textile, as well as fisheries, are critical issues that must be taken into consideration. Other aspects, notably the labor aspect. These sectors, for example, the textile sector, when you look at the back of the industry, the labor is made up of women and youth and unskilled labor.
Usually in the informal sector.
You need to manage this aspect carefully. If not, you'll be negotiating an agreement which, rather than propelling your economy, will bring an impact which will unleash those former workers on the streets, protesting every day.
Yes, it could actually have a negative impact on development.
Absolutely.
One of the main objectives of the AfCFTA is to create an inclusive development.
Perfect.
Inclusive development for all.
You can look at the case of Lesotho under AGOA, with 15% tariffs. Thousands of jobs lost.
Yeah, over 300,000 jobs.
People on the street,
Kenya,
direct
over
and indirect.
66,000 jobs.
Yes, all this, I mean,
the
an alarm
issues
on how negotiations on sensitive issues must take into consideration other factors other than the rules of origin itself.
Right. So
you look at the automotive sector.
Yes.
Africa is playing a very little role in the automotive value chain.
But
whereas our little role has a major impact on the development of the industry, leading back to production in DRC.
Well, if I can actually just talk about that, the environmental standards are also things that we have to take into account, because countries who are fairly industrialized like South Africa have very developed regimes when it comes to climate policy. So the climate standards are much more rigorous than less developed countries like Cameroon. And if you take, for example, their taxonomies, they have very stringent standards for manufacturing of specific components or for specific sectors. So Africa can play a very important role in the automotive sector.
Absolutely, because when you look at
the
potential for Africa
yes.
to contribute in the production of a vehicle, we have rubber, which can go into tire.
Yes.
We have lithium for electric vehicles and batteries.
Yes.
We have leather for car seats and the bonnet.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have aluminium production in 5 countries, with South Africa playing a leading role. His site, aluminium manufacturing in South Africa. We have Mozal in Mozambique. We have Egypt Alu in Egypt. We have Ghana, which is producing, and Cameroon. These countries coming together can decide to contribute in the production of car parts, notably the doors, the aluminum part of vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. The bonnet.
Absolutely.
The
So we have the potential to contribute significantly in the production of vehicles.
Okay.
Nigeria, for example, innocent cars. South Africa with car assembly. South Africa has a long history of car assembly.
Yes.
Now in the Maghreb region, we look at Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt. They have gone into car assembly. Ghana, Rwanda, Kenya, the Volkswagen car assemblies have been set up. I think this was already setting the stage for Africa's contribution into the automotive industry. So my thinking is that we don't need to be afraid. We have the potential. We need now to soften the investment regime, unlock through complementary policy options, which I earlier said, our industrial policy, our incentives for investors coming into these niche sectors, which has a huge potential for us to sit into the global industrial table.
So you mentioned an important aspect of regional value chain development, which is attracting investments. Now, the investment protocol states very clearly that it's important for all investments coming into Africa to benefit local communities. So skills and technology transfer, labor standards, environmental impacts, all of those are now tied to investment. For foreign investors, that could be viewed as an impediment. So how should Africa recast its investment attractiveness to be able to pull in capital from foreign investors?
Well, as of now, the protocol is not yet in force.
Okay.
It needs to still go through ratification. When you look at Article 23 of the agreement,
Yes.
the protocol is not yet in force. And we look at across Africa now, countries are coming up with new investment regimes. Cameroon, for example, the latest one is July 2025.
Yes.
Just 3 months ago, the president signed into law the investment incentive legislation.
If I can cut you just one time, is it possible that Africa's investment regime is very oriented towards what has been done?
Investment promotion and investment facilitation.
But we're talking about special economic zones that have tax holidays for extended periods of time. We're talking about prioritizing the development of industries, specifically in the IT and tech sector, with tax holidays or suspension of payments or social security contributions. Those are unknown. But we've also had these incentives now in some countries for between 10 to 15 years. So when we talk about simplifying the investment regime, is it about tax attractiveness or is it also about process improvement?
Well, my opinion when it comes to attracting foreign direct investment is that we should build sectorial policies. When you throw out a one-size-fits-all piece of legislation,
it's unlikely to work and deliver on this.
Yes.
So if we're going to target investments in automotive
textile sector, we need a textile policy.
We can have.
When we are going into the mineral sector, we need a mineral policy. When we are going into the wood sector, we need a wood sectorial policy framework. So this aspect,
Yes.
when you look at the new investment regime in Cameroon, it has highlighted priority sectors. Now what we expect is that each priority sector should have a unique regime that comes to support the piece of legislation. Okay. The textile sector now needs to look at the entire value chain, which is not captured into the legislation. Absolutely. First, we can go on a ban on export of cotton. Why not? We can go on a ban on export of cotton.
But if we do,
the second
be able to produce the cotton that is used to make these shirts and trousers that we're wearing today. Do we have the
when the investor sees that, they come into the chain. Remember, today Africa is one of the key players in cotton production. But then Brazil's cotton is selling high because of innovation and development.
Yeah,
we are endowed with these resources, but we need to think 15 years ahead of us. Research and development should be a key component of our production.
And that should be decentralized away from Iran towards other agencies that can actually
absolutely
better to this.
Institutions themselves, so they don't need to have a robust research and development center. where they are attracting researchers from all parts of the world to come and sit down for 6, 7 months, 1 year, conduct research with them, and then share the outcome with them.
Yes, because we need drought-resistant species, we need disease-resistant species.
So that to me is how investment regimes need to be tailored. When you want to invest in the logistics sector, there should be a piece of legislation that comes to support the investment code itself for it to be able to deliver investment.
Because it's very capital-intensive.
I've had the opportunity to work on investment issues for quite a good number of years. To me, these regimes need to address specific issues. Yes, to attract investment, you need to address specific issues. Especially now that the AfCFTA, on the trade on goods and trade in services aspect, have been unlocked. We need to accelerate our domestic processes, the complementary policy measures, the investment regime that we developed.
Yes.
It's a response to new challenges.
Of course.
The head of state, again, in his political manifesto, has highlighted the need to review the investment legislation again, which is an excellent
initiative.
Yes.
Now, if we can just go on another opportunity, as we see it in CEPI, is payments, right? In Africa, every year we lose about $5 billion because Africa is the only continent where
African trade.
Yes, 5 billion, businesses lose about 5 billion because we're the only continent where if a Cameroonian wants to buy a good in Nigeria, we have to convert our respective currencies
into dollars and then back into naira.
Every other continent, at least 45% of their trade happens in their own local currencies, except for us. So the AfCFTA Secretariat, in collaboration with AfCFTA, have created the Pan-African Payment Settlement System to ensure that Africans can trade using their own currencies. We welcome this news at CEPI because research from reputable academics ourselves and also the likes of Jita Gobina show that the dollarization of African economies, the fact that we convert our currencies into dollars for trade, increases the incidence of currency and banking crisis and the severity of this crisis. Unfortunately, only 17 central banks in Africa and 54 commercial banks across the continent have fully taken advantage of the Pan-African payment settlement system. Firstly, I would like to know from you, why has uptake been so slow? And secondly, what can we do to encourage more commercial banks to actually adhere to this system?
To commercial bank, this is a business opportunity. But what about, you talked about 45% of inter-trade transactions with local currency in other parts of the world, notably Asia. For you to trade, you need to produce goods. Currency is backed by the production capacity of the economy. Because when people come and demand your goods, the likelihood is that they will use your currency because of your industrial strength. Africa, we're talking about 55 economies, very much diverse levels of development. And small countries.
The level of trade is
with 1 million inhabitants.
Yes.
With very low level of production, industrial production. Compared to Asia, where we've had the Asian tigers in recent years. Japan, South Korea, coming up Singapore. And when you look at their connectivity, because when you talk about trade, look at those trade enabling factors. Connectivity is there. Be in maritime, when you look at Singapore Airlines, look at Malaysian Airlines, look at Korean Air.
But if we, in
that
our
connectivity
case,
and that linkage is enabling trade to go and then enabling the use of their currencies because they have what to offer. Because money is only given value by what people demand in a country.
But in the context of Asia, there's also been an intentional use of policy to steer the economy.
Absolutely, to direct the use of local currencies.
This is what the Pan-African Payment Settlement System.
Now we talk about commercial banks on body and central banks as well.
Yes.
When you look at the what I would call the monetary history of Africa, it is
colonial,
yes,
depending on the West,
absolutely,
still anchored in Western countries.
Absolutely.
The France CFA, for example,
yes,
60% of our reserves for beer is kept at the French central bank.
Yeah.
And although this our peg to the euro for us has brought some financial stability because it's prevented our currency wild swings in our currency. This is why we are not
You think so?
Nigeria and Ghana. I mean, this is what the data shows. It's not been perfect, but it allowed.
Do you know that is a
currencies to
policy
be
space that
stable.
has been taken away from us? It's a policy space that has been taken away from us.
Yes, monetary sovereignty.
Absolutely.
Which no amount of money and stability can buy.
And they are depriving us from
now,
developing economically.
So in regards to the Pan-African payment and settlement system, what
The
should we
Pan-African payment of the PAPS system is a welcome development, for my opinion. I strongly encourage banks to onboard it so that the $5 billion loss from the continent to the dollar becomes a business opportunity for our continent. Imagine $5 billion being injected across Africa.
businesses can invest in the human scale their production, they can access trade finance and the larger. So there's a massive opportunity there. But again, going from trade finance and segue into the broader implementation of the AfCFTA, it's been 5 years now since we effectively began implementation of the AfCFTA. The AfCFTA founding document, if I can call it that, essentially calls for a strategic review. Where is Cameroon in that strategic review?
Well, the agreement itself provides for a 5-year review by the state parties to be able to assess implementation, identify challenges,
What has worked?
and then enable the Secretariat to coordinate maybe certain reforms. So far, I think Nigeria is the only country, to the best of my knowledge, that has done the 5-year implementation review. Cameroon, I think the policymakers maybe are still looking for partners to support this process. And why not say people engage on this? This is an opportunity for you.
Absolutely.
To support the implementation of the agreement.
Yes,
because this review is intended to inform government, to inform state parties on where are the opportunities and where are the challenges, so that a redesign of an AfCFTA strategy may be carried out.
So we can adapt, right?
Absolutely.
We can adapt and accelerate the implementation of the AfCFTA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, we are always looking, we are hoping that in the near future we'll be able to undertake such a review, because it's imperative for us to understand what has worked, the opportunities and the challenges at the policy level, at the private sector level, to ensure that we can ramp up exports and trade in the AfCFTA.
Yeah.
And also, perhaps why not start the implementation of the protocols, although they have to be gazetted at the local level. We are fortunate